Hi, I'm Zach, and I'm back with another bite-sized build video. Today's project is fairly simple, but it's something I've needed to make for a long time. I have a bunch of photos that I've taken over the years, so I had a friend who has access to a large printer print several of these out on a large piece of fabric. My goal was to get these photos out from under my desk and display them on the wall, so I thought a gallery wrap picture frame would be a good project. I went back and forth as to what type of picture frame I was going to build. I had never built a gallery wrap picture frame, so I did some research on the internet before starting. Since the wood frame is completely hidden, it doesn't make sense to use an exotic wood species or use fancy joinery, so I went with a simple 2x4. I ripped the 2x4 in half on the table saw and removed the rounded edges to leave me with two square pieces, 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. As the name implies, gallery wrap picture frames have the photo wrap around the edge and go all the way to the wall. This means that the frame needs to be undersized by 3 inches in each dimension, so I cut the 4 pieces of the frame with this in mind. Like I said, the frame is completely hidden, so fancy joinery that is impressive to look at is completely pointless. I went with a half lap joint in all 4 corners. I used my combination square to measure out the cuts and marked them with the pencil. I like to put a scribble on the piece that I'm cutting out so I know that it's a scrap piece. With the measurements marked, it was time to cut the joint. I started by cross-cutting each piece on the table saw with the blade set to half depth. Once this was done, I took the 4 pieces over to the bandsaw to complete the 90-degree cut, freeing the scrap that I had marked earlier. While I'm making these cuts, I want to take a quick moment and talk about Patreon. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's a way for you to show your support to content creators like me by directly donating money to support my efforts. In return, you get exclusive rewards like behind-the-scenes content, free merchandise, and monthly video chats to talk about making things. Patreon support means a lot to me because it's a way for me to connect directly with you. When you support me on Patreon, you're helping to make these projects and these videos happen. I'll have a link at the end of the video where you can check out my Patreon page to see the rewards. Thanks for letting me take the time to talk about Patreon. Now let's get back to the build. I've got all the half lap joints cut and it's time to assemble. I spread some glue both on the cheek and the shoulder of the joint before securing it in place with some brad nails. I repeated this process on all 4 corners to complete the frame. At this point, I'm ready to start stretching the canvas and tacking it down to the wooden frame. To do the stretching, I'm going to use this tool that's called a canvas stretcher, and I learned about it when I was researching about this project. I didn't even know it existed, but this helps grab onto the fabric and stretch it around the frame as you tack it down. The first step I'm going to do is take the long edge and just tack it along here as an anchor point. The idea is to start in the center and tack that in place with some staples. Then move to the opposite side and use the tool to grab the fabric and stretch against the side you just tacked down. This gives you something to pull against. Once it's tight, you put a couple of staples in. From there, you go back to the side that you started on and start putting in a couple of staples at a time, working your way outward. Each time you put a staple in one side, make sure to stretch the fabric against it and put a matching staple on the other side. I continued this pattern until I completed all 4 sides. So the next step is to do the corners. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not an expert at this technique. In fact, just 20 seconds ago, I had my phone out watching a YouTube video on somebody doing this who actually knows how to do it. But it looks pretty straightforward, and I think I got the hang of it, so I'm gonna give it a shot. First, you wrap one side around the corner of the frame like this and tack it down with a staple. Next, fold the other side in on itself and create a crease right on the corner of the frame like this. Use the tool to pull the fabric tight and staple it down like this. I messed this up a couple of times before getting it right, so just be patient if you try this. I repeated this on all 4 corners. When I was done, it was time to flip the frame over and look at the results. I really enjoyed making this gallery wrapped picture frame. Hopefully this project inspires you to make something that you're excited about. If you're new here, you may not know that I make a lot of other project videos like this. You can watch those by clicking on these thumbnails. And don't forget to check out my Patreon page. If you enjoy these kind of project videos, please consider subscribing to Bite Sized. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I'm Zach, and I look forward to seeing you next time.